Hello, my friends, and welcome to MSP Unplugged's Tech Talk Tuesday. My name is Rick Smith, and I'm your host. I'm joined by my co-host, the one and only Chicago's own Mr. Paco Lebron. How are you today, sir?
Boy, Mr. Rick Smith, I'm doing fine on this nice full Tuesday. How you doing over there in New Jersey? What's the weather like?
It's rainy and crappy today,
And
but
ugly.
we are getting a little warmer today. We are getting a little warmer. Uh, I'm just gonna get the elephant out the room here. For those of you watching on video, Paco did not punch me in the eye, but I am suffering from something. I think I got allergic reaction to a client or something here because woke up this morning and I got a big fat eye. I'm not sure what it's from, but anyway, we'll move on. Just want to let you know I didn't get beat up or anything. But this is the place to learn tips, tricks, and strategies to help you run and grow your IT service business. This is whether you're a one-person shop or an established business leading a team for the journey. This is the place for you. Now, we have a guest today, and before we bring him on, we like to make a quick announcement, as we always do, about our upcoming event and favorite topic, and that is, Mr. Paco.
So I'm going to go with it's not probably Taste of Chicago that's coming up here with all the great food. So you must be talking about probably one of my favorite things as well. And it's got to be TechCon Unplugged.
That is right, my friend. That is right, my friend. TechCon Unplugged is happening September 6th to the 10th at the Delta Hotel in Woodbridge, New Jersey, my neck of the woods. TechCon Unplugged is our annual gathering of IT business owners, techs, and vendors in the space. At TechCon Unplugged, you will learn from like-minded business owners in panels and breakout sessions, gain key takeaways from partners and vendors in the community. And my absolute favorite part of the whole experience is what Paco deems as where the magic happens. That's those one-on-one, spontaneous, and group conversations where great friendships are built, relationships are cultivated, and ideas are exchanged. Now, tickets are on sale at techconunplugged.com. At the listing of the release of this recording, you will have essentially 4 more days to take advantage of our early bird pricing of $199. That is good until March 31st. So we do encourage you to go get your tickets now, take advantage of that price, and we look forward to seeing you there. Anything to add on to that, Mr. Paco?
Nope, just get your tickets. Early bird tickets are coming up here shortly. So if you are if you are interested in coming, this will be the lowest price point for the ticket, and we do mean it this time. I know in previous years we've been providing discount codes, but just with the cost of the venue, we want to make sure we rewarded those who purchased early and for our devoted listeners as well. So just techconunplug.com, get your ticket there before the end of March 31st.
Sounds good. We do have a guest today joining us on Tech Talk Tuesday. Something we absolutely love to have happen is to have other techs come and discuss how they run their business and the things that they're doing that could, help benefit us all in the community. So our guest today is Ismael Amado, or Izzy as we'll call him. He's from IT Ninjas based in Jacksonville, Florida. How are you today, Izzy?
I'm doing great, guys. Love the energy. I love the had an allergic reaction to a customer. I think we've all had that before.
Yeah, this just stuck with me. Right on. But yeah, so Izzy, again, welcome to the show. For those, just kind of the format of the show is we like to get the audience to know who you are, how you came into tech, and what you're doing now. So can you give us a brief introduction of you?
Yeah, of course. So, I'm originally from the West Coast. I'm based out in Jacksonville, Florida right now. Who am I? I'm the son of an immigrant, and he came over from South America, I want to say in the mid to late 60s, and served in the Navy thereafter. And it's kind of amazing that I'm here today. Sometimes I don't know if it's like serendipity or whatever you call it, or I don't know if there's a good word for it, but it kind of amazes me sometimes the opportunities that we've had in this, where we're at in life, where this country's at, and being able to start a business from that, right? So it's a very humble beginning. And so I always try to keep that in the back of my head. It is a little bit of a chip on my shoulder. Getting into tech was, I don't want to say I fell into it. It was something I always wanted to do. I was always tinkering with computers as a teenager. And, you know, out of high school, I was throwing boxes in warehouses, right? So I was working docks, late hours, grave shifts, and just, you know, going to whatever staffing agency I could to pick up, you know, work. So at some point, one of those staffing agencies just had a really big shortage in IT talent. And so what ended up happening was they said, hey, do you know anything about computers? I said, yeah, you know, I know a thing or two. I do a lot of online gaming, yada, yada, yada. And they had me do some competency tests, which I did really well on. And from there, I had a couple interviews, which I did pretty well on. And so I ended up that front of the line help desk, answering the phones, you know, that tier 1 support in the Silicon Valley because, you know, proximity. I was living in the Bay Area at the time. And I was hungry, man. So, you know, I would finish whatever workload I had. I'd run to my sysadmins. I'd ask them, you know, if they had more tickets, you know, how do you do this? How do you do that? And so I kind of built the repertoire up and the skills up to actually function in the IT space through a lot of experience and later on certifications. And so that's kind of like the early career. I spent about 15 years working in Silicon Valley for a number of different companies, big contracts like Apple and Genentech and VMware, and hanging out with those guys on site and figuring out how they ran IT departments. And, you know, to bring that all back to how IT Ninjas got started, you know, I got kind of jaded of the enterprise and corporate space. I was getting zero fulfillment out of it. They were paying me pretty well. The prices in the Bay Area are pretty high too. And so it's kind of offsetting, and, you know, there was no fulfillment in the work. And somewhere along the lines, I started thinking about, you know, like I said, to bring it back to my dad. And he was a good man, but he failed 2 businesses. And it was lack of IT knowledge and finance that kind of led to that. And, you know, I had this epiphany working at those enterprise jobs. Like, how cool would it be to bring what I know from the enterprise space, you know, from that really refined, sophisticated Silicon Valley IT department to small to mid-sized business and nonprofit. And I was like, okay, now I got to run with this, right? And so, you know, I went to a local Starbucks and got on LegalZoom, and, you know, next thing you know, I got a company going, and it's just been kind of off to the races from there.
Really cool, really cool. The true bootstrapping way to do it, huh? Learning it and to just start the business, which is essentially, Paco, the way you and I got started, correct?
Yeah, pretty much. It's funny because he actually just mentioned a name that I haven't heard in years, was Genentech. So in a previous life, I actually was a database manager for a pharmaceutical consulting firm. And Genentech was one of their biggest clients. And so that's how I knew of the name. And then obviously all the others. So Genentech, Novo Nordisk, Novartis, all those, you know, for those in the pharmaceutical space, you know what I'm talking about. So but Genentech is not a name you hear quite often. And then probably the only consumer or like newsworthy was they were working with Google to make the contact lenses for, I think it was diabetes research or something like that. So definitely a blast from the past. But yeah, like you said, you know, being able to bootstrap it, you know, and either leaving on your own to be able to start your own thing or being pushed out on your own to start your own thing is definitely all similar stories on how to kind of get it together and bootstrap it to where it is today, for sure. Yeah. Now, Izzy, how long have you been in business for?
So I started in 2018. I actually formed the company in 2018. I didn't do anything with it probably until like late 2020. And I got kind of fed up with, you know, management and other things. You know, most MSPs start because we're fed up technicians that think that we can do it better. Right? So I did that in November of 2020. I had no idea the pandemic was around the corner. And so I was all piss and vinegar, and I was like, we're gonna do this. We're gonna expand, and it's gonna be great. I'm gonna go all in on this business. I was like, yeah, you can't visit customers. Good luck.
Yeah, it's definitely been an interest for sure in that time frame. Go ahead, Rick.
No, I was just gonna ask now. So, as an MSP, you know, what do you guys have a particular area you focus on, or you work with what they call it, a niche market, or do you basically work with, you know, a diverse clientele?
So I would say it's a really diverse clientele. And so I got burned really early, guys. And I feel like when that happens, you kind of learn your lessons. And I had a customer, big customer, that didn't align with that whole small to mid-sized and nonprofit kind of vision that we had. And, you know, they were 93% of my book of business, right? It was like, you know, brand new company. We got this massive contract. And, you know, I didn't really have to do a whole lot. And a lot of it was IT consulting and project management. So it wasn't as focused on device and user management, onboarding, offboarding, kind of the bread and butter of what we do in the MSP space. And so, man, I got burned. And so when they left, you know, I moved my company and my family from California to Florida in October of 2021. By March of 2022, that customer was long gone, right? Or actually, I take that back. That was in 20, and then in 21 that happened. And, you know, it turns out that I had a pretty good network that was working pretty hard for me where I was. And coming to a new locale and a new state in general, you know, I had no idea how to conduct business out here. I hadn't been in a proposal meeting in like 6 months. And then, you know, my biggest customer walks. And like, so, you know, now we do focus on that, right? So I've just kind of said to hell with it. And I've leaned into that, you know, 5 to 25 man shop and those nonprofits that are, you know, 50 to 70 users. And it's pretty diverse. I mean, we have sports and entertainment, sports apparel, accounting, small healthcare clinics. There's a few others. Yeah, and actually a couple nonprofits. We actually did retain one of our California customers that's an international nonprofit, and they've been around since day one as well. So, you know, it's nice to have those loyal customers. They definitely stabilize the business. So we try to keep it as diverse as possible, man. It seems, you know, we're pretty close to the Jaguar Stadium out here, and so it seems like I get into a lot of meetings with people that are in and around, you know, that kind of economy. But, you know, to be honest, Jacksonville is big on transportation and logistics, right? So we have like 4 airports, a spaceport, which like no one knows that we have, like a ton of rails. We have a really active port, and they're constantly dredging up the St. John's River to make sure that you can get those big cargo and container ships in. And so, yeah, like I said, really diverse. But, you know, moving forward, I'd really like to start targeting that transportation and logistics space, because it's just, Jacksonville's just a T&L town, to be honest.
Sounds good. Now, and you touched on this a little bit, and one of the things Paco and I like to focus on is how to help MSPs grow their business. Now, it seems like, you know, you've started a couple of years ago, you know, really into it a couple of years ago, and it sounds like you've grown a little, you know, quite well. Now, is there any secret sauce you have, or is there a way you're marketing or getting your name out there to get these clients that you've been able to acquire?
Yeah. So my initial thought was all in on an inbound, right? So I started touching up the website, making sure the SEO was tight. I had a marketing agency that was helping me with local SEO. You know, I was losing money, but I was like, if I'm losing money anyways, might as well go ahead and just, you know, spend a little more and see if the marketing pays off. And so I did lean into that a little bit. It didn't pick up as quickly as I hoped. And so at that point, I was getting a little desperate. I was like, all right, now I've been in the red for, you know, 6+ months here. I lost that big customer. Like, I'm going to have to do something dramatic, or it's just, this thing's going to fail. And so I called a mentor of mine, somebody who I worked with in the Valley. And he's actually, I hope he doesn't mind me mentioning him now, but Chris Johnson, he's head of the ISAL program with CompTIA. And I was like, man, like, how did you get your early customers? Because he had a really successful, like, 2,000+ endpoint MSP at some point before getting into that kind of CISO, CIO space. And I mean, he asked me a really simple question. He goes, are you a member of your local chamber of commerce? And like, I hadn't even considered it. And so I went downtown to the Chamber of Commerce office, and I signed up for their trustee program as well as their just general membership program. And it turns out that was kind of striking a little bit of gold there, because Jacksonville has one of the largest chambers of commerce in the nation. It's 3,500 plus businesses. And I just leaned in, man. I started going to all kinds of meetings and shaking hands and asking competitors how they're doing business and whatever else. And some of them told me to kick rocks. Some of them were nice enough to actually have me in their office and do a little mentoring and give me some pointers on how to conduct business out here. And it's, you know, Jacksonville is very Relationship based, man. I used to be able to pick up a customer in California on a quick Zoom call and lose them just about as fast to a competitor that just, you know, undercut me on price. I feel like out here you actually have to do something wrong for people to get out of business with you. Like they really want to maintain their relationship and be in business. It's incredibly in person and relationship based. And so, you know, leaning into the Chamber of Commerce, you know, I started serving on a couple boards for a couple different councils. I kind of threw my hat in the ring for Small Business Leader of the Year, ended up getting it for one of those councils. Awesome. And yeah, thank you. And the exposure on that's been really what's been helpful. I do stay up on that SEO and that inbound leads, but I gave up on paying for clicks on Google. I wasn't getting a good rate of return. And, you know, I'm not as active on social as I once was because I'm very busy. But a lot of that, those routine posts, getting on LinkedIn and making sure that, you know, you're seen, has really worked out. I mean, to sum it all up, man, in Jacksonville, I think my philosophy for marketing has become, it's better to be really known by a smaller group of people than it is to be seen by a large group of people. So that small group of people that really knows you, they're going to be the ones that talk about you. And, you know, just to add to that, you know, I was listening to one of your guys' local podcasts earlier. You guys were talking about, you know, working with other MSPs or break fix, like laptop repair shops. I mean, I have lunch with some of my largest competitors' sales reps on a regular basis, right? So we're not in competition. There's plenty of, you know, we can all eat in this town. There's lots of business. But just kind of showing them that you're not, you know, I'm going to be a dick for lack of a better term, and that you're willing to work with them. And you know, that's been huge, man. I mean, you get those hot leads that they, you know, maybe are, you know, price out a little bit, but they're right in my sweet spot. You know, I get a 150-man shop and I'm a pretty small shop. No way I serve them well. I don't want to ruin my reputation. Right. And so I'm happy to pass that their way. And so those relationships, man, they're everything.
Yeah. There's a couple of things that you mentioned in there that I really want to highlight is, you went to a Chamber of Commerce when you needed help after speaking with a mentor. And I think that's huge. I think for us, we had the same thing where we went with an association who was the quasi chamber at the time in the West Loop. And specifically, it was through that relationship we partnered with a bigger MSP at the time, and we built that referral relationship. They've since been acquired, but that's kind of how we've developed and really started our early days. But you also mentioned something really important is that, you know, there's enough work for everybody. And I think a lot of people just don't understand that. And they continue to keep thinking like, well, I got to get everything I can. And business is business, right? And you know, for those that want to leave for price, that's their prerogative. But I think that there's an ability where everyone needs to know that even if you had the opportunity to get all the business in your town, you couldn't handle the business in the town, whether it's the sheer numbers, personalities, the way you provide support. I mean, there's just so many things that factor into that it's not possible to even try and do that. So those are things I just want to highlight for those that are listening on your story is that, you know, there is a way to do this. It is okay to ask for help, and you should not have to worry about you not being able to get business, because there is going to be some type of clients that are going to want to do business with you on the way you do things. And as you mentioned about the community aspect of it, you know, we have a similar where like you have to really screw up if you have a diehard client that, you know, is interested, you're providing them value, you're giving them impact, and they continue to keep you know, they're just going to keep loving to do services with you. Rick, when you're doing with clients, you know, has it been to a point where, you know, as you're finding these clients or developing these relationships, do you kind of highlight and see clients may not be a good fit for you? And there may be to a point where you have to just, you know, understand that there is enough business out there to not be hankered down, whether for good or bad for clients.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it goes back to something that Izzy said as well, is you need to know what your limits are and who you can serve, you know, and that's very important because, you know, I know, and it's taken some time, it's been some trial and error, but you know, now I'm much more equipped to say, hey, this is not going to be a good fit for us for whatever reason. If the company's, you know, it could be too small, it could be too big, it could be what the client is expecting of you, you cannot, or you are not willing to attempt to deliver, because that is not the way you do business. So those are all things that play into that, that help you make a decision on, whether a customer is right for you. And it goes back again. I'll echo this again, because he said, you need to know who you are, and what your sweet spot is, and then and be willing to be willing. Again, we've talked about this on more than one occasion. You have to be willing to say no. And I know it's hard sometimes, particularly if you're growing, you're trying to catch every dollar you can. But in the end, we've said this a lot of times, it ends up hurting you more than it helps you when you take on something that and particularly when this is not the right fit for you. So,
and I want to steer the conversation to, we've just mentioned about doing business with great people and being able to do business with clients, but I kind of want to steer the case of, Izzy, if you're comfortable with sharing, is who's your favorite vendor to work with right now in your stack? Who's someone that you feel that, and you don't have to single them all out. I mean, I think I have favorites, right? And maybe if you need a top 3 or top 5, but who is it that you really enjoy working with right now that you find has benefited you as a business, providing value to your clients, but also value as their client because they're investing in you, and it's a two-way street, because that's what we love to propose on this on the podcast, is that, yeah, we love vendors diving into us as well, but we understand the vendors are a business as well. And there's a relationship that allows us to really just enhance and grow that partnership when both clients are being supported. So is there anybody that comes to mind, or any team that comes to mind that really helps IT Ninjas?
Yeah. So there's about 1 million names and different consulting organizations that, I want to say I get free advice from them, because I just ask a lot of questions, and sometimes, again, they tell me to kick rocks, but I keep bugging them. But when it comes to the MSP specific, like, vendor space, we have a huge focus on not only being OS agnostic, right? So I want OS X and Windows compatibility, but also productivity suite agnostic, right? So I have people that like Google Workspace, and I have other shops that like, Microsoft, and I love that flexibility. And, we try to deliver at cost. And so with those 3 things in mind, vendor agnostic, or OS agnostic, productivity suite agnostic, as well as just, being cost effective, my top 3 favorites are really easy to mention. First off, Huntress is just amazing, right? So Rick's got the shirt on over there. Their EDR and now MDR, their process insights, love it, is fantastic, right? So they're catching stuff and they're investigating cases, while I'm asleep. And so I love that. I love that it's real humans doing that. And then, on the cost-effective side of backing things up, I really love Dropsuite. They're great. And same thing with IronScales for the actual email security and protection. They're kind of a bit of a newcomer to the space, but they're very easy to deploy if you're going to a Microsoft environment. There's a massive process if you're going into a Google Workspace environment, because you kind of have to do with Google's cloud stuff, and it's a bit of a mess. But if you're going into a Windows environment, it's like 3 clicks and you're up and running on some pretty robust AI-based email security. And then I saw on your guys' episode list, you guys had talked to Rob Ray. Shout out to Rob. I actually get all 3 of those products through Pax8. Great vendor, great at getting you that good margin and keeping your monthly recurring revenue up. So love those guys.
Very cool. Yeah, no, definitely love the Huntress. Huntress, we're me and Rick are both Huntress partners in our own MSPs. They were previous sponsors of TechCon Unplugged. Love the Huntress people over there. Same thing with IronScales. We used to use IronScales as well. Great product, very solid for what they did, for what they do. And like you mentioned, I think they were an enterprise technology trying to find their way into the SMB, and they were able to do that with Pax8 and really deliver that value. And I've heard nothing but great things about Dropsuite as well. So those are great. Those are and from through your relationship with Pax8, You know, and we'll dive into that a little bit. And I think PAX 8 has made a lot of these tools attractive and attractive, affordable, and easy to get a hold of. What attracted you of these three specific tools? Because I imagine you probably were on the lookout, or you, as you mentioned, you had conversations with other peers. What made you feel that you needed to bring these tools into your stack with what you're doing currently for your clients?
So a few things, man. So what I mentioned earlier, those big three, right? Good price point, productivity suite, and OS agnostic. All three of those products fit that mold, and so we love that. So it's this interesting thing in the cybersecurity space right now that it's very complex, but we need it, right? So backups are part of that. Actual protection is part of that, right? And you know, the secure email gateways, the sedges of last generation, they do a certain amount, but they don't do enough. And so you need that inbox level protection. And like I said, Iron Scales is really good at that. It's, you know, one of the challenges in my space is hitting the three that I keep mentioning, but also trying to do that at the best price point, right? So I am focusing on small to mid-sized businesses, and I am focusing on nonprofits. I have to make myself accessible to them, right? And that might sound almost desperate, like overly emphasized, but it's why I started the business, right? So IT Ninjas was meant to deliver that enterprise level IT experience, game-changing technology to everyone, not just those with a massive IT budget. And so those tools are great. They also keep costs low enough so that I can make them accessible to the customer base that I'm targeting. There are, you know, just full disclosure, there are more robust tools out there that we've identified that I would love to use. I can't make enough off of them to justify implementing them. And, you know, we do the best with what we have, in the sense that what we have needs to be accessible to the customers that we're going after.
Yeah, I think that's a very important thing to highlight. And this is something my director of IT Ops, John Dubinsky, who owned an MSP previously as well, says, is that, you know, I think we all just get wrapped up in all of these big name tools and all the features that they have, which are beneficial. But, you know, you have to consider how of our size clients need that protection, and you have to adjust accordingly, right? You don't need to have, you know, X vendor to spin up virtual VMs and secure that on the cloud from there. Nor do you need, you know, an all-inclusive BDR and appliance situation where, you know, for a client that maybe a 4-person office doesn't need all that for quote unquote overkill, when you could still provide them the value, you can still provide them to the framework and still have the great experience for them as well, while you can make a profit / a living off of providing them your expertise. And I think that's a very important lesson that a lot of our peers just, they tend to feed in a lot of to the hype for the shiny object syndrome. Yes. and I do agree that, you know, sometimes you do have to be on the lookout. You do have to see, you have to, you know, but you got to do that on your own terms. And again, think with the ability of, what does my size client really need the benefit and help for? You know, a $4 to $10 million nonprofit, it's going to be different than a $250,000 nonprofit. And what are they putting in place that needs to be protected? And there's going to be things of that nature. So I definitely get that. And, you know, having nonprofit clients myself, it's a little bit harder to try and get them to approve an increase or something without having board director approval. And there's a big process sometimes on all that to kind of get it going. So you have to make sure that you have all of your ducks in a row and explain to the value of it, because really that's what it's all about. It's the value that you're providing them and the impact of that value to help them mitigate their risks so that they're as defensible as possible, so that they're not deemed negligent to their own users or their own patrons or clients that they're helping them as well. So definitely all great things that you've mentioned here as well. Rick, anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I wanted to echo it, because it goes back to when we look at our websites or what we say we do, right? One of the things we say is that, you know, we don't do a cookie cutter. We treat every client as an individual, right? We look at their individual needs, and that's what we offer them. And that's exactly what you're talking about here. You know, it's like you said, the larger nonprofit is going to need different tools maybe than the smaller nonprofit. And this all goes back to, again, knowing your market, knowing your niche and what you offer if it fits that category. And I think that's just very important for us, because again, a lot of the things that happen to us that hurt us the most is self-inflicted, and taking on clients you shouldn't take on, or offering things that you don't necessarily have the capability to support. Those are self-inflicted wounds, and we've all been there. So I'm only speaking from experience. We've all been there, taking on a client or taking on a product that didn't fit us. And as we mature as an MSP, all of us, we're starting to learn more and more, what makes sense for us. And I just think that's important, what you guys are talking about. And I just wanted to echo it there.
No, absolutely. Now, Izzy, anything additional to add on to that? But because I would love to know, how are you leveraging your resources for your business? So you mentioned Pax8, you're using them for distribution. Are you using any of their other services that they provide, educational, professional, etc.? And any other associations, any groups like maybe ASCIIs or anything like that you've delved into to really utilize any resources that our listeners may be interested to hear how you've kind of implemented into your business?
So it turns out when you start an MSP, you're like, yeah, I'm a technician, I'm going to get this done. And just as a side note, Rick, what you were saying, man, we inflict those wounds, man. It's complexity for the sake of complexity sometimes. And sometimes I look at what I built a year or two ago and I'm like, what was I thinking, man? Like, got all these, AWS like servers and in this really secure environment. And like, at the end of the day, it's like the front end for like a WordPress server. Like, right, that's just running a website for like a 10-man company. That was I thinking. Like, just go to WordPress engine. It's like $50 a month, dude. Like, what was I thinking? So there's that. The complexity for the sake of complexity, you've got to get away from. I think as engineers, we tend to kind of lean into that sometimes because we can. We're like, oh, I just learned this new cool thing about like networking and redundancy, and so I'm going to implement that completely like pointless use case. Like, there's not even a use case for it. So I just wanted to say that really resonated, man. That hit home. So the fed up engineer thing, we all start as these technicians, but the second you start a business, you're like, oh no, I'm sales and marketing. What have I done? Right? It's those soft skills, man. And a lot of, I talk to some high schoolers out here, just, community outreach stuff. They have questions about the IT space. I tell them soft skills, man. Take a writing class, learn how to, speak in front of people. Those are all important. As far as services or I would say consulting and services, Paco, I think two of the biggest people with companies and firms in that sales and marketing space that have really helped me develop and actually kind of sort through that gray area that is sales and marketing and really learn, specific to MSPs, how that works. Jennifer Bleen. So she runs the Ultimate IT Sales Conference. I think it's her company is actually IT Sales Revolution, and she has this really tiny book. It's like 90 pages, maybe 100. You could read it on a plane ride somewhere, and it's about selling cybersecurity. It's somewhere. You're looking back too, Rick. It's somewhere in my stack here. I'm so sorry, Jennifer, if you listen to this. I forgot the name of your book, but that, and then also. Actually going to one of her conferences down in Orlando, it was really good. And it taught me a lot about that sales process. Now, on the flip side, okay, so I'm excited. I feel like I can go into proposal meetings and I can actually get the job done, right? So thank you, Jennifer, for that. Ian Richardson and Carrie Richardson at Richardson and Richardson Consulting, they've really helped me understand the importance of that discovery process and that discovery meeting. There you go. Simplified cybersecurity sales, I think is what it's called. Great book.
Put that up in the screen. We got to give Jennifer some love because we do love Jennifer here. She was a former sponsor for us as well, and definitely a trailblazer for sure. Her Ultimate IT Growth Conference is here. I believe it is on June 13th to the 14th in Orlando, Florida. Definitely check it out over at mspsalesrevolution.com/ultimate. We got to get Jennifer back on here and I actually have it on my notes to reach out to her for some other things. So definitely glad to hear you're finding value from her and all that she does, but for sure. But you were mentioning Richardson, Carrie and Ian and what they're doing on their side.
Yeah, so they're kind of an amazing couple, right? So Carrie ran Managed Sales Pros for a long time. It's a cold calling service. It's fairly high end. You have to be really big to actually use them. They're not exactly cheap. I bumped into her on like Reddit and LinkedIn, and like I said, I'm kind of a pest. I'll like just bug you and start asking you questions. How do you do this? How do you do that? She likes watching people hustle. So when she saw me actually doing it and posting about it and saying, hey, this works, she was like, okay, I'm gonna give you a little bit more of the secret sauce there. And you know, she ended up marrying Ian, and Ian ran Doberman. I think it's not Doberman Consulting, but Doberman Technology, and I think that was in yeah. So amazing company. He exited, and then they leaned into this Richardson and Richardson Consulting, and so those two coming together with their experience and defining processes. I mean, Jennifer was absolutely amazing for saying, hey, this is what to do in these meetings, and here's a workflow and all this stuff. It was one-on-one sessions with Ian that made me realize how important that discovery process was. Are you qualifying them up front? Are you really finding out enough about them to understand if they're qualified up front? And are you getting the most out of those discovery meetings, right? So they also got me out of the mindset of, hey, free network assessment or free cybersecurity assessment. Like Ian likes to say, like, you've got the same problem, and Jennifer echoes this as well. They have the same problem as the 3 shops before them. You know exactly what's wrong, right? They're not securing Microsoft 365 properly. They have the default username and login for all their Comcast hardware and most of their network firewalls. Like it's basic stuff. And so what you really need to do is you need to create that connection with them, and have them understand that you're a business and that you do need to discuss budget up front. Can you guys actually afford us? Is this worth us moving forward? But also, playing dumb a little bit. Like, what are your problems? Tell me. Okay, I don't know what that's like. What is that like? How is that impacting your bottom line? The 2 questions I love that Ian gave me were, what problems are you facing right now in IT, and how much are they costing you? Right? And then the second one is, if you do nothing about it, what will be the outcome? And so you're kind of getting them thinking about, hey, this has a legitimate impact on your business. IT is not icing on the cake. It's core to you building and becoming the business that you want to be. And until you can get business owners and executives and office managers to understand that, you're not going to have a lot of success in those discovery meetings. They've saved me, I got to say, so much time, man. So like, I'm not going through the whole sales process on a lead that wasn't interested anyways, which I did early on way too often, right? I'm spinning my wheels going after people who were never going to buy anyways. So that, I would say both of them contributed to me really understanding that early sales process and those discovery meetings and the power of them. So I'll stop talking. That's a lot.
No, I don't know if Rick wanted to add on to it first, because I know he's got to cut out here soon. But I got my opinions as well for what you just talked about.
Well, I'll say this, and I'm going to say resource agnostic, but I love the fact, and I think it's a great lesson for all of us. You seem to seek out, and like you said, you will talk to anybody, ask questions. Some people tell you to kick rocks, and you just keep going. And I think that's that's part of it. It's like, you seek out the help you need, or seek out the advice, or the just whatever it may be that you think will help you advance your business and better serve your customers. To me, it just sounds like you're very persistent about making sure you do that. And I think that is, for all of us, a great lesson. It's like, a lot of us, particularly as techs, we are introverted, right? So we don't talk as much. We don't, we're not as comfortable in those situations. Speaking for myself, I fall into that. So I am learning to come out of my shell and basically seek the help and not be afraid to ask for help and say, hey, I don't know this, or can you guide me with this? Paco can tell you all the time. I'll call him and maybe some stuff under his brain. He's like, I can't believe this guy didn't know this. Maybe I didn't know it. It wasn't clicking into me the way it needed to click to me, right? So, but I just think that's a great lesson for any of us, whether you're starting a business now or you've been in business like me for 20 years. there's always someone who has something that they can teach you and something you can learn. And I think we all just need to keep that in mind and stay persistent.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think for you know, hey, I mean, we all gone through with our questions that we feel are dumb. I mean, you educated me on, and as embarrassing as it is, the difference between a Cat 5 cable and a Cat 5e cable, right? And basically resulted in like, that's why my freaking thing wasn't working for so long, but with the right speeds. But anyway, and yeah,
Was it too long? Were you trying to go too far out with the 5?
No, so it turned out that I was trying to get more than 100 megs off of that 5. So I was trying to get good speeds, and I kept trying to figure out why did I keep capping out, and I was like, that's the reason why. So Mr. Smith was able to educate me on that piece as well. But what I really wanted to really dive into, what you talked about, is A, not being afraid to ask for help, but really B was the fact of, you know, you mentioned the discovery process and how important that is to really understand, like, you know, you essentially are dating your client at that point. This is the date. This is what you're trying to figure out, what makes sense, what's going to go through in that process, and really understanding, you know, where they're going to go. Like my very first meeting with my new account executive who came into the role, her very first call was not a fit. Like, huge not a fit. I mean, there were red flags galore, and I cut the meeting short, and she was curious as to why I cut the meeting short. And so we have a questionnaire that we kind of go through, a discovery questionnaire that we worked with the bigger MSP, because we asked for the help, and they help educate us on, you know, here are the questions to ask. And once you get to these moments, you'll realize, is this a fit or not? And then, like you mentioned at the end, we discuss about budget, and then we talk about, all right, from the budget, you know, we share pricing right on the first call, so they're equipped to say, are we going to move forward, or are we going to talk about it and kind of go from there? And so it's been an interesting process of, exactly like you said, qualification is so huge on understanding of A, trying to waste your time, and B, understanding that the fact that, all right, this is where I want to go, this is what they want to go, seems like it's a great posture, we're good to go. Like, I had a prospect call the other day, which was the referral. We had a great conversation. Sounded like they were very harping on one particular item. I highlighted that item and said, yeah, we can do it the way you are doing it, with a little bit of a spin, but it can be done. And it just changed the conversation, where he said, okay, well, this now just opens up everything, because everyone I've talked to basically said, I'm out of my mind. And so it goes back to, again, how do you support your size client with what they want without sacrificing what you need to put in for them, mitigation, security, and efficiency. But I think the other piece that you had mentioned as well is, in through that qualification, is understanding that both parties are educated. Like, they have the value from that call, and understand, like, you know, hey, you know, I have these problems, you know, do you need to come in to take a look at it first before we kind of move forward? Well, no, because from everything of what my questionnaire has done, because I've done it for so many years, I've highlighted what are going to be trouble areas that you've actually communicated to properly. And if there's anything outside of the scope, we can adjust later on. It's not a huge deal. And that's just the art of getting that qualification and that discovery process, as you just mentioned, so inherent, so dialed down, and really understanding what you try to get from your clients. You know, Izzy, I know we've been talking for a little bit right now. We've gone through, like, who are your favorite stack or tools, some of the items that have been helpful for you, even the avenues. You know, for someone that's listening and, like yourself, they want help, they're trying to figure out what's going on, whether they're, you know, starting out, they're a one-person shop, they're have a few that they're trying to figure it all out. What is something that you felt was most impactful? Either a lesson, someone mentioned to you, that really helped you understand this business a little bit better, that could be maybe possibly help someone else who's listening, to help guide them, motivate them, etc., as they're kind of going through this IT journey.
Man, so, I mean, it kind of circles back, honestly, to what we started with, and that is, you know, you just have to be willing to reach out to peers in the space. Like, right, it is surprising how many of them are really open to just discussing business in general. One of my local mentors, he has the kind of client list that'll make you blush, man. He's got, like, the Jacksonville Jaguars, Duval County Schools, City of Jacksonville, million endpoints. He does, like, 3 other businesses, you know, like the MSP is just kind of like his day-to-day. And so he's one of these amazing entrepreneurs. And, you know, I've spent hours and hours at his office whiteboarding stuff, talking about pricing, how to approach customers in Jacksonville in general. And, you know, that conversation, that friendship, that mentorship would have just never happened had I not just bumped into him at a meeting and said, hey, man, I'd really love to pick your brain on some of this stuff and see how you're approaching things. It turns out that a lot of us do have really negative experiences early on, right? And so one of the reasons he invested time in me was he was like, yeah, I got shunned by so many people when I started. I'll never do that to somebody else. I'm more than happy to share with you. It's plenty, you know, we can all eat out here. Like he's a really down to earth dude, and I love him for that. And then also just, you know, realize if you're just starting out and you're a fairly small shop, you know, the ambition is always national. I want to go national. I want to be huge, and then I want to sell. And that's great and all, but just, you know, realize that starts with wins on the daily basis. So I like Andy Frisella. I listen to Real AF a lot. It's a great podcast. He had the MF CEO project before that. And that was all entrepreneurship. And he just talks about win the day. Because if you win the day and you're checking boxes on a daily basis, you might have a month full of wins, 2 months full of wins, 3 months full of wins. You can track if you've been winning or losing on a daily basis. And that goes hand in hand with something that Jennifer says a lot. You know, the work that you did last quarter is the sales calls that you're having this quarter. And so, you know, to somebody struggling early on, which I most definitely did, you have to persist. You know, like I said, it's a slow burn. You're just going to have to invest the time and effort and trust it. I love that the ice cube metaphor, right? Like, let's say you had a huge block of ice on your kitchen table, and then your kitchen was a big old freezer, and you want to melt that block of ice. You know, you're going to have to ratchet the temperature up past 32 degrees for that block to start melting. You might start at 0. From 0 to 31 degrees, nothing is happening, and you are working your tail off, ratcheting up that temperature. And you're not seeing anything. There's no results, right? Spending all this money on a marketing agency, Google clicks, optimizing my website, going to chamber meetings, paying my chamber dues, shaking a million hands, got a stack of business cards this thick, phone's not ringing, right? It's easy to just say, none of this is working. This was stupid. Why did I start this MSP? But the fact is, you might be at 28 degrees, 30 degrees. You might be this close. You might be this close, and you just have to push a little harder. And if I had to give a message out to anybody else struggling or just trying to, you know, get a little further with their MSP is, you're this close. You either have the right plan and you just need to work it a little harder, or it's the wrong plan and you need to switch up, but you won't know until you keep working it. And so, you know, have the plan, work the plan, and just try to stack those victories on a day-to-day basis. They might be small. I shook a couple hands. I called 2 people that I got business cards for. Whatever, like just do that on a daily basis. Or, you know, I made 10 cold calls this week. Try to get 12 next week. Try to get 15. Try to get 20. Worst case scenario, you'll learn a lot about your competition. Like, right? But think about that. So yeah, that's it, man. I know that's a lot, but just persist. Trust yourself and trust that you made the right move. It is very easy as a solopreneur, as both you guys know. It's very easy to say, yeah, it's not working. Is it? Or are you just need to be a little bit patient? Right.
Yeah. No, I mean, like you said, nothing beats persistent. And that was a quote I heard from the founder in Michael Keaton's movie talking about Ray Kroc's journey for McDonald's. So if you haven't seen it, it's on Netflix. Definitely a great movie. Rick, any last words before we end the show here?
Well, I do. I think it's just been great advice. I really enjoy having you on, Izzy. You know, it's a lot of the lessons that I think a lot of us need to hear. You know, and again, it goes back to the why we're here doing this show is because, you know, we're just like everyone else, right? We have the same struggles, the same challenges as everyone else, and we're all just trying to learn from each other. And I just want to thank you, you know, for your time today. And I think you brought a lot of knowledge and you know, a lot of inspiration to some of the MSPs out here looking to move to that next level, whatever that level may be.
Appreciate you guys, man. I'm starting to enjoy your show. I picked it up recently, and I just love the energy you guys give. I really appreciate you guys having me on.
No, yeah, and Izzy, again, really appreciate you coming out here, sharing with us today. Anyone who's listening that wants to get a hold of you, pick your brain, talk to you, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
So LinkedIn seems to be where it's at in Jacksonville, man. I may not have said that when I was back on the West Coast, but it just seems to be where it's at. So we're real active there. You can look me up, Ismael Amado, Izzy Ninja on all the other socials, whether it be Facebook or Instagram or whatever else. And our website's at itninjas.tech. I'll put it out there. If there is any MSPs out there that just want to pick somebody else's brain, I've had so many people give me that benefit. You get in contact with me through the website or somewhere else, I will respond, I promise.
Awesome. Very cool. Rick, you want to take it away?
Yeah. We again, Izzy, thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate having you on. And I will say this, you do have an open invitation to come back and join us anytime if you got something you want to share with the audience or just want to shoot the crap with Paco and I about what's going on in business. For everyone else, we want to thank you for tuning in today. We invite you to tune in every Tuesday and Thursday. You can watch the video podcast on youtube.com/MSPUnplugged.com or catch us on our Facebook page, facebook.com/MSP Unplugged. We ask you to do us a favor. Like, subscribe, hit that notification button to be notified whenever a new episode is available. If you are the one listener who likes to just listen to podcasts, you can take us on the go. We're on your favorite podcast app. We're on Amazon Music, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. For Paco and I and Izzy, I'd like to thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time on MSP Unplugged.